What's good, y'all? This your boy Black G92. Now, for this evening, I'm gonna go ahead and do a reaction to this highly requested documentary, role model, the Bayley story. So I finally got around to it after some time off from this procedure from this past Friday and having the rest throughout that weekend and most of this week and whatnot, and amongst other things, and was supposed to have uploaded like last night and the night before, but just been doing a lot of wrestling and just other things. So right now I'm getting back onto doing this reaction stuff. So shout out to all the people that gave me this video to react to. I'm finally get to it, see what this documentary is looking like in about 3, 2, 1. Shit, what the fuck? Alright, there we go.
If you look at each of the 4 horsewomen of WWE, there's one who stands above all the rest as the top natural babyface.
Okay.
Yes, if Becky Lynch has become the female Steve Austin, Charlotte Flair the women's version of her father Rick, and Sasha Banks the equivalent of Eddie Guerrero, then Bayley can be compared to John Cena, a babyface who got over with kids so wildly while in NXT.
I'm going to play it back, because I do like this intro.
Yes, if Becky Lynch has become the female Steve Austin, Charlotte Flair the women's version of her father Rick, and Sasha Banks the equivalent of Eddie Guerrero, then Bayley can be compared to John Cena.
I like this comparison.
Who got over with kids so wildly while in NXT that many believed she had the potential to be the top star in the company at points. And while booking decisions on the main roster have contributed to her never quite reaching those heights as of yet, she still stands as one of the more underrated performers on the roster. Someone who's been able to become just as good of a heel and has been an MVP of the women's division over the last couple of years. But how did she get to this point? Well, join us today as we take a deep dive into her entire career journey so far in Role Model, The Bayley Story.
She got a nice smile. I have to give her that.
Pamela Rose Martinez was born on July 15th, 1989 in San Jose, California. And it was there that she would find an early love in the world of pro wrestling, with some of her favorite performers while she was growing up, including Bret Hart, Trish Stratus, Rey Mysterio, Lita, and of course, Eddie Guerrero.
Okay.
And perhaps this was what propelled her to develop her own athletic streak as, by the time she'd reached high school, the future women's champion would have become captain of the Independence High basketball team.
What?
But for as skilled as she was on the courts, it was always within the ring that her ultimate aspirations lay, and that was how, after graduating in 2008, she would begin training at local promotion Big Time Wrestling under Jason Styles, this being a company she'd been attending shows for as a fan since she was 11 years old.
Wow.
And with
talk about
worth of
dedication.
Experience getting to see how things were done up close then, it wouldn't take long before Pamela would become a skilled rookie, wrestling for BTW under the name Davina Rose, as she quickly proved herself to be one of the top female prospects in the Bay Area.
Okay.
In fact, she would soon branch out even further as she started working for the likes of NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Pro Wrestling Destination, and Shine Wrestling 2 in the years that followed. That said, it wouldn't be until she came into contact with Serena Deeb in October of 2010 that she would reach the next level in her career, as it was after this that she would get an in with Shimmer Wrestling Athletes, the number one all-women's wrestling promotion in the Western world at the time. And now working for Shimmer, Davina would get a chance to shine in front of an even bigger audience, with her from there solidifying her growing reputation as one to watch, having great matches against the likes of Rhea O'Reilly, Mercedes Martinez, and Cherry Bomb. So with all this success coming her way
impressive
on the
wins,
then, it felt like it should only be a matter of time until a bigger league came calling Davina.
That's quite the big mohawk right there.
Unfortunately, though, at this point, the only big league in North America was WWE. And in the years prior to this, their treatment of their women's division had been anything less than stellar. Yes, bikini models and potential Playboy playmates had long since been the order of the day when it came to Vince McMahon's hiring policies for women. Luckily for this next generation, however, it was around this time that Triple H had taken over NXT and set about turning this into a breeding ground for where he saw the industry going in the future. And this, as it happened, would have a far greater focus on women being treated like athletes just the same as the men. And so in recognizing this, the girl from San Jose would sign a contract with the company in December of 2012, from there reporting directly to NXT, where she would get trained in the in-house style.
Oh, I gotta wait through this goddamn commercial. Shit.
You can spend a little less.
And I don't care about hearing about Walmart. Hell, I shop there all the goddamn time. I was there yesterday. Actually, twice. Get some cat litter and such. Miss college.
Bubbles.
Next year, I'm heading back to college.
Bubbles.
This video's gonna be long as shit. I'm gonna have to split this in like maybe 2
As an
parts.
Expedia member, you earn points on top of your airline miles. So you can go and see even more of all the world's bubbles.
Because these damn commercials.
Pretty soon after that, and she would be rechristened as Bayley, beginning the process then of developing a new character for herself, one that would lean into her real-life childhood love of the industry as she became known as the Hugger, a happy-go-lucky, doe-eyed fangirl who, with her upbeat attitude and memorable entrance that saw her come out to the ring accompanied by wacky, waving, inflatable, arm-flailing tube men, became a quick hit with audiences, particularly young girls, who saw in her something they'd rarely seen in a wrestling ring by that point, a positive female role model they could identify with. And using this wave of support then, Bayley would have some notable early matches against the likes of Alicia Fox and AJ Lee, all this before forming a short-lived partnership with Charlotte Flair, as they teamed up to take on Sasha Banks and Summer Rae.
I remember seeing this mentioned on 3 other documentaries that I
the
reacted
Queen would
to.
turn her back on the fan favorite, instead aligning herself with the heels in the process and leaving her now former partner in the lurch. After that then, the Hugger would seek revenge as she set her sights on Banks, believing it to be the boss who had turned her partner to the dark side.
The
And
dark
after picking up
side.
multiple victories over her, the Cali girl would make it her aim to win the NXT Women's Championship too, the very one that was then being held by Flair herself, as the two collided at September 11th, 2014's TakeOver Fatal 4-Way. But though Bayley wouldn't be able to take home the gold that night, she would soon find a new friend in the form of Becky Lynch. Sadly though, this would result in yet another betrayal for the Bay Area girl as, come mid-October, the Irish woman would have turned her back on her too, also choosing to align herself with Sasha Banks.
It seems like,
And of course, this would lead to Bayley forging a tenuous relationship
it
with
just seems like Bayley just keeps on getting betrayed and everything with all these partners going over to Sasha Banks. Like, that's cray. It must be tough.
From there, they teamed on to take on their by now common enemy, with all 4 women going at it repeatedly in the weeks that followed. Yes, we've talked about the relationship between the 4 horsewomen in depth already over on our videos on the other 3 members.
Oh,
For the
yeah.
purposes of this video, let's just say that, without the combined forces of each of the 3 superstars, women's wrestling in WWE might never have reached the point it has gotten to today.
That's
A
true.
point that's seen it become commonplace for women to be treated as main event players, in some cases, even as the face of the company. And with their combined efforts to raise the stakes of the division came a close bond in real life too, as the 4 would fast become good friends, with a particularly special bond forming between Bayley and Banks around this time. On screen, though, there was no time for friendship, as on February 11th, 2015's TakeOver Rival, each of the horsewomen were booked to face each other in a fatal 4-way match, with the winner not only getting the bragging rights of having come out on top in the feud, but also the honor of calling themselves NXT Women's Champion. And given the wave of popularity Bayley was continuing to receive at this point, it felt like it was finally going to be her moment to shine. On that night, however, it would be the boss who came out the victor by the end of things instead, raising the division's top prize above her head for the first time as she did. So after that then, the Hugger entered into a feud with Emma, a feud which saw the Australian try to light a fire under her opponent by criticizing her for being too nice and arguing that this had been what cost her the chance to win the title in the first place. And for some, this would have been enough to send them spiraling over to the dark side as they tried to find their killer edge, but not Bayley. No, she remained true to herself throughout, with her ending up beating Emma on her own terms following this.
Okay, that's
And now,
impressive.
having regained her confidence once more, the Bay Area girl reset her sights on becoming NXT Women's Champion from there, with her eventually earning a shot at this belt after picking up wins over both Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch in August of 2015.
Back to back.
After that then, the stage was set for it to be the Hugger versus the Boss at August 22nd.
Hugger versus the Boss.
With the story of the girlhood dream reaching its climax here as, finally, after 18 minutes and 22 seconds, Bayley was able to get the better of her heated rival and take home the top prize in the division for
18
her.
minutes is a long ass
That
time.
said, More important than the victory was the match itself, as this ended up being so good that it easily blew away everything else on the show that night.
I bet.
It's been regarded by many to be not only the greatest women's match ever seen inside a
Damn,
WWE
look at
ring, but arguably
Hold up.
the greatest.
Look at those abs. Damn, Bayley got them abs right there. Shit's like they got their six-pack going. Okay.
In NXT overall. And a major part of the reason for this was that Bayley was such a perfect babyface, who'd managed to elicit sympathy at every turn, leaving fans desperate to see her get what she deserved. So when she got this then, and the company had to decide what to do next, it only seemed obvious the rematch would be imminent.
Uh-oh.
These
damn. See, I'm gonna have to split this into two parts. These damn commercials. I hate these motherfucking commercials, I tell you.
I would be honored to be your perfect somewhere.
I might pause. May end up cutting off at the. Damn, that Little Caesars looks good though. Couldn't skip it though.
Yes, despite having been called up to the main roster not long after this, Sasha Banks would return to NXT for the most anticipated rematch in the brand's history a couple of months later at October 7th's TakeOver Respect, where this time, not only would the two women involved be taking part in WWE's first ever Iron Woman match, but the first ever women's main event on a WWE promoted pay-per-view overall. And when the time for the bell came, both Bayley and Banks earned this spot, putting on a performance that some even prefer to the first encounter, with this one ending in dramatic fashion when the champ was able to retain after a last-second pinfall put her over the top at 3-2.
That's what's up.
And so now,
impressive. I'm about to watch that match.
NXT, the fan favorite continued to reign dominantly from there, as she fended off challengers such as Alexa Bliss, Eva Marie, Nia Jax, and Carmella. Behind the scenes, though, there must have been some sense of frustration building, as she'd been the only member of the Horsewomen not called up to the main roster earlier that year. This, no doubt, leaving her to wonder if she was doing something wrong. Ultimately, though, it appears that Triple H had just decided he needed her star power on the black and yellow brand for the time being, and couldn't afford to lose her, too. So from there, then, she continued to dominate. That was until she came up against the unbeaten Empress of Tomorrow, Asuka. Yes, at this point, no one in NXT had been able to solve the puzzle of the Japanese wrestling dynamo. Someone
Man, she
who
fucked up
was
Naomi.
by many to be the best women's wrestler in the world. So of course, this represented Bayley's greatest challenge, one that, given her underdog credentials, many felt confident she would find a way to overcome. After that then, it seemed clear that the now former champion's days on the black and yellow brand were numbered, and this was only confirmed further when, on the July 24th Battleground pay-per-view, she was revealed to be Sasha Banks' mystery partner, coming out to a monster pop to help her real-life friend defeat Charlotte Flair and Dana Brooke. And if Vince McMahon didn't have plans to call her up full-time before the match, he most certainly did after seeing how fans reacted to her that night. So from there then, the Cali Girl would finish up her time on NXT by having her rematch with Asuka at August 20th, 2016's TakeOver Brooklyn 2, doing the honors for the Empress of Tomorrow once again here, as she said goodbye to the black and gold brand for good.
Wow.
2 days after that, and she would make her official debut as a full-time member of the Raw roster, with her immediately setting about making a name for herself by challenging the, at the time, Raw Women's Champion, Charlotte. Of course, the Queen, remembering how good her prospective challenger was hesitant to give her this shot at first, and this would ultimately lead to Bayley having to defeat her lackey Dana Brooke first. That victory finally gave her a shot at September 15th's Clash of Champions in a three-way match that also included the Boss. Unfortunately, though, the Hugger would not be able to get the big win on that night, as it was right in the middle of the period where Charlotte was going on an undefeated pay-per-view match streak. And this ultimately would lead to much of the momentum she'd come in with being dampened in the weeks and months that followed, as she continued to challenge the champion a number of times, only to lose on each occasion, this placing her as someone who just couldn't get the job done in the minds of many fans. Thankfully then, WrestleMania was coming up, and many expected that any damage suffered would be repaired if the company went ahead with what seemed to be their plans to coordinate the fourth Horsewoman at the Showcase of the Immortals, having her there end Flair's undefeated streak and become champion in the process. Interestingly though, while WWE did end up having this moment, they chose to do it 2 months earlier instead, with it coming at the February 13th, 2017 episode of Raw as, from there, Bayley then formally ended the pay-per-view win streak of her opponent 3 weeks later in Fastlane.
That leg submission.
Yes, it was a curious decision and one that still doesn't quite make sense today, but the important thing to take from it was that Bayley was now the champion, and that after a rocky start on the main roster, Vince McMahon seemed to have finally recognized the potential merchandising cash cow he had on his hands with someone who, many at the time still felt, had the potential to be the female John Cena. And this upward momentum only continued after that when the champion successfully defended at WrestleMania 33 on April 2nd of that year, beating Flair, Banks, and Nia Jax in a fatal four-way match. Ultimately, though, any momentum she was building was cut short when she came up against Alexa Bliss that summer, with many still considering this to be the feud that killed her babyface run as, throughout it, Bayley was portrayed less as the happy-go-lucky fangirl she'd been before, and now more as a literal child in the body of a fully grown woman, one who got outplayed by her opponent at all costs, and when push came to shove, couldn't bring the fight when it was needed during a kendo stick on a pole match. Yes, Vince McMahon in his older years has rarely been accused of understanding the subtleties of character, with the perennial hero Bayley actually starting to draw some boos from crowds around this point. Luckily, though, she would get to take some time away to rebuild her character soon after.
I know that shoulder was hurting like a bitch out hitting it with that stick. Get hit with that stick.
When a shoulder injury picked up in August,
that was from
some time off.
That was from another match. From another event. Okay, I thought it was from that same match. So I know that shoulder was hurting like a bitch though.
It was hoped then that when she did return, McMahon would have figured out what made her character so appealing to fans in the first place, particularly younger fans, and that she would be able to recover from this setback. And as it happened, the first step in the boss's plan towards this recovery was to play off the real-life friendship between Bayley and Sasha Banks as, upon the former's return from injury later that year, he would place them into a tag team together, with them from there regularly fending off challengers in the form of Paige, Mandy Rose, and Sonya Deville. And so over did the two become as a team that after that, many began pushing for the company to introduce women's tag titles so as to give them something concrete to fight for. But while these tag titles would come eventually, it wouldn't happen quite yet, because in the meantime, the story of the Boss and the Hugger would take many different twists and turns, with them appearing to be on the verge of falling apart at points, as it seemed like Banks was about to return to her heel ways. And this ended up leading to them having to enter counseling together where, in a series of on-screen skits, they would be forced to work through their issues, putting a stopper on the feud before it could ever really get started, something which some criticized at the time as being a little anticlimactic. Perhaps the reason for this, though, was that WWE realized the two were better off as a unit for the time being. And this unit would continue to rack up wins over the rest of the year as, from there, they formally named their team the Boss and Hug Connection, a reference to the late 90s duo The Rock and Sock Connection, something which both women had been a fan of growing up. Still, for any momentum they seemed to be regaining, they were at the same time being forced to watch as, elsewhere, the other two horsewomen were reaching such heights as to be involved in the first ever WrestleMania women's main event, with Becky Lynch in particular growing so popular that she had become the clear face of the company by then. And sure, WWE would throw the Boss and Hug Connection a bone when they had them become the inaugural Women's Tag Team Champions at February 17th, 2019's Elimination Chamber, but come WrestleMania, they would have lost these in weak fashion, killing their run before they could ever really get a chance to establish the new belts. Of course, Sasha Banks would deal with the disappointment of this in her own way, taking some much-needed time away from the ring, but as she did, Bayley would continue to soldier on, trying to make the best of this relative dark period.
Hey, sometimes things don't work out for her. Hey, sometimes things don't work out the way you want it. And now this movie looks dope.
It's psychologically terrifying. Packed with twists.
I'm gonna have to check this out. Check this one as well as Beast Out. Oh, it's in theaters now. Okay. I'm gonna have to hit up the movie theaters.
Angie's not sweating this text since there's 0 overdraft fees if she overdraws.
These damned commercials. Can't even click off them bitches.
Another day to adjust if he overdraws by more than $50. Overdraft assist from Chase. Make more of what's yours.
Period for her character as she worked her way back up the singles ranks. But a major part of the problem by now was that WWE's main roster booking had killed her babyface character so much, her potential to rise any higher had plateaued. With that in mind, then, a radical change was needed, and this change would come right after she was able to defeat Charlotte Flair to become the SmackDown Women's Champion at May 19th, 2019's Money in the Bank pay-per-view, this making her the first ever Grand Slam champion in the women's division. Yes, many would have thought it unthinkable at the time, turning the
I
ultimate
bet.
babyface heel. But that was exactly what was about to happen, because after the boss returned from her hiatus following this with a new villainous streak, Bayley would come out to confront her, ostensibly appearing to talk her down from her new attitude, only to then turn to the dark side herself after the two beat Charlotte Flair down with a steel chair. And while many at the time questioned how things had managed to get to this point, a heel turn ended up being the best thing that happened to the Hugger in years, as over the next few weeks, she would radically change everything about herself, destroying her wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube men, and cutting her hair so as to present herself in her new, meaner incarnation.
Wow.
Where she would ironically call herself the role model, a hero that young girls could finally look up to with pride.
Okay.
After that, her and Banks would go on a reign of dominance through the women's division previously unheard of, beating everyone in their path as they became the best part of SmackDown, and occasionally Raw, for a time. And when in 2020 the world went into shutdown, the Boss and Hug connection only went from further strength to strength, as not only would Sasha become the new Raw Women's Champion around this time, but the two would once again become Tag Team Champions as well, this leaving them with all the gold in the division around their waists. Ultimately, though, the power couple would have to implode at some point, and this ended up happening after they lost their tag team titles in August 30th's Payback
Kick to the
pay-per-view,
face.
with Bayley turning on her partner at the end of the match to finally start the feud between the two that had been teased the previous
Ooh, got
year.
the cast too.
And this
Okay, around the
showdown would end
neck.
up coming at the following month's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view where, after another show-stealing match, the Role Models' 380-day reign as SmackDown Women's Champion would finally come to an end. Following this, then, the feud was put to bed, though Bayley would remain a top player in the SmackDown Women's division going forward.
Uh-oh.
That said, though, despite
Looks
her
like-
work as an MVP during the pandemic era, it did feel like she was being thrown to the wayside somewhat when, come WrestleMania 37 in April of 2021, she wouldn't even get a match on the card, instead being forced to watch from the sidelines as her best friend Sasha Banks became the third of 4 horsewomen to main event the biggest show of the year. Of course, after this, Bayley would get to feud with the new SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair for a while, but it felt like she was being underappreciated regardless. As it happens though, WWE have since had some more time to dwell on their usage of the Grand Slam champion, as she's recently been taken out with an ACL tear, with this being expected to keep her out of action until 2022.
Damn.
And so, when she does come back, we hope that the company finally realizes the full potential of what Bayley can do, because despite achieving so much already, she could easily be more still. Hell, if Vince McMahon plays his cards right, she could still be a top babyface in the division, one that could easily main event to WrestleMania on her own merits one day, as when it comes to role models in the women's division, there are few, if any, better than Bayley. Well, guys,
Yeah, she
what did you
definitely
think
fits
of the
that whole
video?
image
Let us know in the
based
comments
on this
below.
documentary
Don't
I
forget to
seen.
smash the like button,
And
subscribe
that
to the
was a
channel,
great
as well as
documentary.
follow Wrestle with Andy on Instagram
Another
and
great
Twitter.
one at that.
Thanks for watching.
Another great documentary. I was definitely impressed how they put it together, and it was pretty dope seeing like how her and Sasha Banks were cool and such like that. Their friendship seemed legit based on the clips I've seen. It seemed like they were legitimately like were good friends at one point. Of course, they had little fallouts in the ring and everything else and feuds makes things more interesting. That's when you know it was real. You know what I mean? When there's like people keep friends feud and then get back cool and everything else. So. So let me know in the comment section like about any matches they either done together or against each other, or any tag team matches, what may have you with the 4 horsemen of females wrestling. Be sure to post them in the comment section below. Also, any other videos you want me to react to, whether it's movie trailers, movie clips, songs, music videos, interviews, what may have you. Post them in the comment section below. And also, if this is your first time watching this reaction video, be sure to hit that like button, hit that notification button, hit that subscribe button as well. And also, be sure to follow me on social media accounts, which you post in the description box below. And also, hit that donation link to my Cash App to help support the channel. And we may have you. This your boy Black G92 about to sign off. Holla at your boy. Peace.